Welcome to my channel, welcome to my garage. This is Rick's Garage, and this is a continuation of the video that we're doing on a series for the Blitz by Takom. This is the Panzer III, the Pz.Kpfw.III, Ausf.N. And this is the Panzer III from Takom. And in the first video I went through the building of the tank, pointed out some problems with the instructions where they were unclear, and also gave some build tips. In this video we're going to go through the painting and weathering of the tank. Now in the last video I ended it with spraying the entire tank in Tamiya gray primer. I'll let that dry overnight, and then today I applied some NATO black all over the tank. That's XF69, and then when that was dry I applied some Tamiya flat white, which is XF2, in areas where it's going to help simulate the fading of the tank, the base coat where it's been in the sun for quite a long time and the fading of the paint has occurred, and that's what all the white around here is going to be doing. I put it also underneath in here and all the wheels, and also right here on the top as well. So that's what all that is going to help us do when we put our base coat on. Now the base coat is going to be from Mission Models, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of it because I'll probably botch it. But I will put a picture up on the screen on that color. And then once all that's done, we will then put on, for the camouflage, will be NATO green, which is the XF67. So right now we're waiting for this to really thoroughly dry overnight, and then we'll continue on with the painting process with the semi-gloss, the decals, and the Ts80, which is the flat clear, and then we'll continue moving on with the weathering process. So let me get all that done. We'll come back, show you what it looks like, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, here's the tank all painted up. It's got the camouflage on it, and I had a little bit of problem getting the camouflage on the side armors. It was a little bit spotty. The rest of the tank went on just fine, but I had a little bit of problem on doing the camouflage on the side. This is my very first time doing any type of camouflage, so hopefully as I do more tanks with camouflage, my technique for side painting will be a lot better. But overall, I think everything came out just fine. The side armors are not glued on permanently. I'm going to remove those so that I can do the side of the tank of the weathering. But right now I just wanted to show you the overall look of the tank. I'm going to put on the turntable here so that you can see the entire tank and how the camouflage went on. Now I've got a coat of Tamiya's Ts80, which is the semi-gloss, and that's going to protect the paint as well as allow me to put on the decals. Then once I got the decals on, I'll give it a spray of flat clear, which I think is the Ts79. And then once that is dry, I'll start the weathering process. But I just wanted to give you a complete view of the tank with the camouflage on it. And again, I think it turned out pretty well my first try. I'm going to lift the tank up just a little bit so you can see how I've done the side of the tank. And got camouflage there on the side and also on the wheels. I'm going to be weathering this up, and I know it's going to be hidden once the side armors are completely on there, but I just wanted to show that I did put some camouflage on the side of the tank, and I will be doing some weathering. But that's where the tank is at right now, and while this is drying, I'm going to be working on the accessories, the tracks that go on the front of the tank, as well as the tools that are going to go on there. I'm going to start weathering those, and I'll be showing you how I'm going to be doing that. Okay, so on with the build. Okay, so while the tank is drying, I'm going to start working on some of the details that are going to go onto the tank, namely the tracks that are going to go onto the front, the wheels, the tools, and other details. I've already started working on the tracks, and you can see I've got this one here done, and it's all rusted up. And I'm going to try to show you how I achieved this look. So on the larger one, this has already been painted with the NATO black. There's no clear coat on this at all. It's just been painted, and it has been drying for a couple of days. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some odorless thinner from AK, and I'm going to add as an adhesive or a bonding agent, if you will, for the pigments and washes that we're going to be using. So that's on, and the first thing that I'm going to use is dark earth from ammo, and I'll be putting pictures of each wash and pigment that I'm going to be using up on the screen. And the reason why I'm doing dark earth is because the tank has been through a lot of battles and it's gone through a lot of dirt roads. It's not going to go through a lot of muddy roads or swamps or anything like that. So there's not going to be a lot of mud that's going to go onto the tank for my weathering process. So I'm just going to be using a little bit of dark earth to start off with. And this is just mud that has been, or dirt that's been on the tank for quite a while. And you can see that it's going on kind of dark, but it's going to dry light. And I'm going to put a little bit on the back as well. Now you'll notice also too, I did not put any odorless thinner on the back of this track, because you're not going to see it anyway. But for a completion standpoint, I thought I would put a little bit on there anyway. And I'm going to let that dry and come back and show you what that looks like. Now, the reason why I let this thing dry is because I always like to know exactly where I'm at in the process. Do I need to add more dirt? Do I need to add more rust or what have you? And if I did that while it was all wet, I wouldn't really be able to see the different variations of colors and effects that while it's all wet and everything. So that's why I do it when it's all dry. So I'm going to let this dry, come back, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now this has had some time to dry, and you can tell that when it dries a little bit, it has almost a little bit of a rust look to it, but this is dark earth, and it's kind of muddy. And the reason why I'm putting dirt and mud and so on the tracks before I do the rust is because the tracks are going to get dirty before they get rusty. So that's where we're at right there. And if I need to put a little bit more thinner on there for a bonding agent, I can, but this is not thoroughly 100% dry. It is dry enough for me to know where I stand. So my next pigment I'm going to use is from Vallejo, and that's light sienna. I'm going to lighten this up just a little bit. And I'm going to use the same brush I used before, and we're just going to kind of brush on just a little bit of that light sienna. Now if I have to, I can use a little bit more thinner if I wanted to, and I would get out a clean brush because I don't want to dirty up my thinner bottle. So I'm just going to use a smaller brush and just kind of dab it in a couple of places. And that will help bond it a little bit more if you're having a problem trying to get your pigment to stick, putting it on. So we're just going to put a little bit of dry dirt looking to it. See how it looks like it's now parts of it is dry mud or whatever, dry dirt. Or maybe it's gone through some dusty roads. Now I kind of already know where I stand on this. Brush a little bit off there if you think you got too much on. And I know where I stand, so this is looking good. So now my next is now I'm going to start doing some rust. And I'm going to start off with Vallejo Old Rust, because that's a pigment. And again, I might put a little bit more of the odorless thinner on here in the areas that I want to apply the rust. And the old rust, I'm thinking is going to probably more or less accumulate in the grooves or where the tracks meet each other, right here in the seams, for lack of a better term. So I'm just putting just a little bit of odorless thinner in there to act as a binder for that to stick to. And now I'm going to apply Old Rust from Vallejo. And I'm just going to dab it in there in areas where I want it, trying to get it into the cracks. And this is just rust that's been around for quite a while. And again, if you think you got too much on, you can always just brush it off. And when this is thoroughly dry, you can also brush off the excess. But you can see where the rust is accumulating in these little tiny areas. And that's what I'm trying to achieve right through there. And if I need a little bit more bonding agent in those areas, I can add some. So we can add a little bit here, Old Rust pigment, and dab it in. And you can see how it's getting into those cracks. I don't want to put too much rust on this because we got a lot more to do. All right, so now the next thing I'm going to apply is rust, again from Vallejo, and this is a lighter rust, a lighter color to give it a little bit more, it's almost like an orangey look to it. Again, we're trying to achieve this look that we already have. And if you get, again, like I say, if you get too much on there, or you think you have too much on there, just brush it away. So now I'm going to put a little bit more odorless thinner on there, because I'm going to put some new rust on here. Now this is just the way I do it, and quite frankly I haven't really seen anybody else do it this way on any type of video. This is something I just kind of like been playing around with myself. Okay, so now we're going to do the new rust that has just now started to form, using the same brush I have been using, and dab that in. That all in there, everywhere that you want new rust to appear. Okay, now the next color I'm going to do is a brown oxide from Vallejo. Now on top of all the rust that I'm doing, I'll also be using some more of the turned earth and dark earth, because dirt is going to get on top of that rust as well. And then the last that I'm going to do is a light rust wash from Ammo. And I'm going to use a thin or small brush, and I'm just going to apply it in the areas that I want it to go into very sporadically. And that's it. So we're going to let this dry. We'll come back and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, here's the track, all done, rusted up. But there's that one, and of course there's this one. Basically they both almost look the same. There might be a little bit of difference once I put them on the tank and start weathering the tank, which is what I'm going to be working on next. So let's go ahead and move on to the next stage of weathering this tank. Okay, I'm going to start weathering the tank. As you can see, I've already got the decals on that I'm going to put on the tank, and I've also applied some flat clear, which is the TS79. I'm going to let that dry it overnight. The diorama that I'm going to build for this, I kind of envision it just going over a grassy path, no real mud or anything like that. It's going to go by a cliff or a mountainside of some sort. So that's kind of like the vision I have for this. The weathering of the tank, of course, it's going to have rust, it's going to have chips and scratches and some dirt and grime and everything. But in terms of a lot of mud and a lot of grime and dirt, I'm not going to really do that much, particularly in this area here, because it's all going to be hidden by the side armors. But I thought I would go ahead and weather this up anyway, even though it's really not going to be seen. So I'm going to first start off with some odorless thinner right in through here, and use that as a fixer for the pigment that I'm going to use. Let's put it up and through there, maybe a little bit on the wheels too, and also up and around underneath the tracks. And the first thing that I'm going to apply is just some light sienna from Vallejo, and this is going to dry light dirt. So I'm just going to apply it right in through here because it's been collected dirt. And I don't want a lot of it in there, so I'm going to blend it in a little bit. Now typically I don't have my tank on the side when I'm doing this, but because of the type of camera that I have, this is the best view that I can do for you to watch me do this. So I'm just going to go through it just kind of lightly, a little bit on the wheels, a little bit on the tracks. Now the tracks are going to basically have a different color on it, and we'll get to that a little bit later when I focus on the tracks. But up and through here where it's not going to be seen, because of the armor. I'm just going to put just a little bit on there. So the vision I have for this tank is that it's seen battle, but it's going to go on, in the diorama, it's going to go on a dirt path where there's no mud, there's no water or anything like that. But as it's been through battle, it's collected some of that stuff. So there'll be a little bit of mud, but not a lot. I also kind of sort of want the camouflage too to show up. And also the reason why I'm doing this before I put on the armor, put a little bit of dry dirt on here, is that it's a lot easier to do the wheels and the bottom of the tracks with the armor off. So once I have all this all done, then I will permanently attach the armor and then start focusing more on the weathering of the tank as a whole. So I'm going to continue with this and come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, this is what the light sienna looks like when it's all dry or in the process of drying. This is all basically dry. What I'm in the process of doing now is I'm adding a little bit of European Earth by MIG, and I'm added it in here to simulate dry dirt. It's had some time to actually dry. It's more of a dust as the tank rolls around, and it collects all that dust from the wheels and the tracks. And playing that in and around. It's going to dry more up and through here than it is down here at the lower wheels. So I'm kind of focusing on that up and through there. And we'll let this dry and set. We'll come back, show what that looks like. Okay, I didn't realize until it was too late when I was doing the next step that my microphone wasn't working. So the only thing that I've done on that step was to apply some engine oil in areas that I thought it would start to leak. So on this hydraulic area and through here underneath the wheel, this one over here, and on this hydraulic over here, I just applied just a very little bit of fresh engine oil. And then you'll also notice that all the dirt that I put on has dried. And this is not mud, this is just dirt and dust that's accumulated on the tank as it's gone over the dirt roads and fields that it's been fighting on. Alright, so the next step is now to work on the tracks. Okay, before I start working on the tracks, I thought I would do some chipping and weathering on the tank. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here and show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a torn sponge and go into a premix of chipping color, and I'll put the recipe on the screen for you. This is not my formula. This is a mix from Andy's Hobby Headquarters. It's what he uses. So I went ahead and mixed up some of my own, and just taking a torn sponge, I'm going to go and start doing the chipping by lightly going on to the tank, the armor here, and very lightly going over the edges and applying some of that chipping. Hopefully the camera is picking this up. It's a little bit difficult to do on camera, with the camera in the way, but kind of give you an idea of how I'm going to be doing this. So just going to go along the edges at first, and then probably a little bit in the middle here, and I'm just very lightly pressing it against the panel to create those chipping marks. So I'm going to go ahead and do this all throughout the panels here, and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, all the chipping is on the side panels, and I also did quite a bit of chipping down here at the very bottom. This is where the debris would be kicked up from the wheels of the tank, and up on the sides and the top. And I also did some chipping up here on top of the turret as well. In fact, let me go ahead and show you the rest of the tank where all the chipping has been done. Anywhere that the crew has climbed on top of the tank, slid off, tools are going on and off the tank, is where I did all the chipping. So if you see it through. I'll just kind of move the tank around so you can see where I've done all this. Even though I don't have the tools on the tank yet, I did a lot of chipping around in this area as well. And a little bit on top of the numbers. And particularly on top of over here, where the crew could be climbing on and off or getting in and out of the turret. I move it around. You can see all the sides. So that's all the chipping that's on the tank. The next step is to do some scratches. Okay, now with the scratches, you're going to take the same paint we've been using for the chipping and take a very fine brush and very carefully and slowly. You can see I've already got a couple of scratches here. We'll go over here and make one. And very gently make little lines. Now it's going to take some time because it's kind of delicate work. You want to see how you're making these little tiny scratches. And it's a little bit hard for me to do this with a camera in the way, but hopefully you kind of get the idea. And I'll continue this on the panels and come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, now that the scratches are done, I've been taking the chipping color that we've been using and dry brushing some areas of the tank to give it a little bit of a dirt look, but not a real heavy dirty look. More or less like dust has been accumulating on the tank and it has gotten into the rain and it's gotten into the wind and it's been kind of like sitting there. So you can see here I've done a little bit of dry brushing in here, up in this area over in here, and it just kind of adds a little bit more wear to the tank. So I've just been taking the chipping color and just been dry brushing it around, getting it into this area in here. I don't know if the camera can see it or not. Turn the tank over a little bit. In this area right in through here, did some dry brushing and just kind of giving it a little bit more of a dimension to it. Okay, here's a different view looking down, giving you an idea of how that dry brushing is working out. So again, all I'm doing is taking the chipping color and just going around in areas and giving it a little extra dirt, but not too much. Just enough to show that there's been some wear and grime on the tank. Also gives it a little bit of extra dimension to it as well. And this is just dry brushing. And it takes a little time to get the effect that you're looking for because it is dry brushing. So a couple of brush strokes may not really show anything or any change in results, but the longer you do it, you'll slowly see the effects of the dry brush. So I'm just going to go around the tank in areas here and there sporadically and do a little bit of this, and then after that we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now that all the scratches and chipping has been done on the side panels, we're going to take a little bit of streaking grime and we're just going to go along the bottom edge here and kind of put it on kind of thick. Now this is just a wash. And I know it looks kind of dark now, but we'll be correcting that a little bit later. Over on here. And then we're going to take another brush and we're going to wipe off the grime and we're going to put it just a little bit here at the top. Just along the edges. And this is a little bit difficult for me to do with the camera on in my way. Okay, now we're going to take another brush with just a little bit of thinner on it, and we're going to go along the top of where we just applied and thin it out just a little bit. And then we're going to take the same brush very gently and move it down and brush it down a little bit. Kind of blend it in. And then on the bottom, we're going to kind of like stipple it, like put it in little areas here to get rid of the big blobs and almost kind of blend that in a little bit. Now right away as you're doing this, you can see how it's starting to blend in. You got to be careful with this because you don't want to knock the screens off. Like I said, this is a little bit difficult for me to do with a camera in the way. And you kind of do this in random patterns because this is what the tank has been kicking up as it's been moving around. All the dirt and mud and everything that it's been going through since it's been in battle. Got a little bit of spattering here and there. And through here a little bit. And I'm going to continue with this and let it dry. We'll come back and I'll show you what the end result looks like. Okay, now I'm going to take some light rust and a smaller brush and carefully apply it to areas where some rust would appear sporadically. This is a kind of a stark color, so you don't want to put too much on it or too much of the wash on your brush. But you want to put it in areas where rust will appear, and you want to do it sporadically. Right down here at the bottom area, this is going to get a lot of rust down in here because all the water and the mud and everything and moisture that's kicked up by the wheels on the tracks, and particularly on corners and on sides. Rust is going to appear. We'll just put just a little bit in those areas. Okay, now we're going to take a round brush, clean, dipped in some clean thinner, and we're going to apply some light sienna at the bottom. And this is going to go on kind of dark, but when it dries, it's going to dry dusty and a light color to it. Okay, all around the bottom down in here. Now I'm not going to apply a lot on here. So any area that I think I've got too much, I'll just dip it in a thinner, kind of blend it in a little bit. Now anything that gets on to the sides of the tank is also going to be on the tracks. So you also want to get a little bit on your tracks as well. Just like that. Around. Be careful not to knock off the side panels. Now once this dries, it's going to dry kind of flaky, and anything that you think is too much, you can just brush off. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this, and then after I'm all done, I'll let it dry for 15 minutes or so, and we'll come back and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, remember when I said if you don't like what you have on here, or you think it's too much, well, you can brush it off. And that's what I'm going to do here with this soft bristle brush, and doing it kind of gently, because I do want to still leave some behind, but not a whole lot. If you think you've removed too much, you can also go back and reapply it. Now, if the bristle brush you're using you think is not working and you think you need a little bit more of a stiff brush, you can do that too. Just keep in mind that it is going to rub it off more. And then, of course, you want to go down here on your tracks as well. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this, and we'll come back and I'll show you what the end result is, and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now we move on to the muffler, and I'm going to use the chipping color that we did earlier for all the chipping and the scratches. And I'm going to use that as my base coat. So I'm going to get this all applied. The camera's in my way, so it's a little bit difficult for me to really do a good job on this. So I'm going to continue painting this, let it dry, and come back and show you what the next step is. Okay, when I applied the base color, which is the chipping color that we were using, I didn't put it on nice and smooth. I waited for the paint to dry a little bit in order to give it some clumps. And that's going to be the foundation of what we're going to build on top of. And I've applied just a little bit of odorless thinner, again to use as a bonding agent. And I'm going to apply some rust all over the muffler. And we're going to apply it on kind of thick, because it's been rusting for quite a while. And I'm going to get this on, let it dry, come back, and show you the result, and then go on to the next step. Okay, now that has dried, I'm going to apply a little bit of iron oxide. This is a pigment powder. Hopefully this is going to form some chipping or peeling of metal. So we're going to let this dry and come back and show you the next step. Okay, here's our rusted muffler that's been drying overnight. I finished this last night about 10 o'clock and let it dry overnight. And now I'm going to take a little bit of brown panel liner, so to bring out some of the details of the muffler area here. It's just a little bit of brown panel liner. Just up and down and through here a little bit. Bring out some of the detail of the flaking of the muffler. So again, the camera's in my way, so I'm going to do this off camera, or finish it off camera, come back, and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now that the brown panel liner has a chance to dry, I want to add a little bit of black panel liner to bring out a little bit more of the details. And also too, a little bit of the smoke residue that would be coming out of the muffler. Maybe some burnt oil and exhaust that has been coming out, and maybe a little bit of leakage. So I'm just going to add just a little bit here at the edge here to bring that out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this a little off camera, come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, that's our muffler completed and all rusted up, and that is all I'm going to do on the tank. The next step now is to work on the tools and some of the accessories that are going to go on it. Now, I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not, but one of the things that I did do, and I did it off camera, was you'll notice that there's a little bit of a shine on the tracks right here. And what I did is I just took a regular pencil and I just rubbed the pencil. I don't know if I can show you this or not on camera. I just rubbed the pencil along the edge here. And that puts some little graphite on the track. And that's where the track is going to rub off, or the dirt's going to rub off. It's not going to accumulate at the edge of the track. So it's almost going to be like that this part of the track is clean and it's going to show bare metal. I didn't use any type of powdering product on this at all. I just took a pencil and just rubbed it across. And it might be a little bit hard to see on camera, but there is a little bit of a metal look to this part of the track. So I'm going to do that to the rest of these down here, and I'm just going to use this regular pencil. But right after this, I'm going to move on to the tools and the accessories. Okay, now that the tank is done, it's now time to work on the tools and the accessories, and I thought I would start on the cable. I've already done one, and I'm going to see if I can show you how I did that by doing the second one. Now, the first thing I did was I applied a coat of Tamiya gray primer, and now I'm in the process of applying a thin layer, or a thin coat, of flat aluminum from Tamiya. And I'm going to put that all over the cable. And sides and back, just all over it. So let me go ahead and get that done. We'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, now that the flat aluminum has dried, and what you want to do is you want to give it a nice good coat, but not a lot. Just enough to cover up the gray primer and to give it that steel look to it, like a clean steel look to it. Now the next color I'm going to add is the Natal Black, and I'm going to dry brush this on. So I can give it a kind of a dirty look to it, but to bring out the twists of the rope at the same time. So I'm just going to dry brush some Natal Black on this. And with dry brushing, it takes a while for the effects to appear. So I'm going to do this all over the rope, and we'll come back and we'll show you what the end result looks like. Okay, now we're going to apply some rust from Vallejo. And the effect I'm trying to achieve, again, is giving it a rust, but also allowing some of the natural color of the cable to show through sporadically. So I'm going to take a little bit of Vallejo rust, and this is going to be almost like a dry brush, but not completely. And I'm just going to brush it on, but not heavily. And as I dry brush over and over, I'm going to continue until I get the coverage that I'm looking for. Trying not to get too much on. And if you get a little bit more than you want in one particular area, don't worry about it, because again, you want the cable to show through in certain places and sporadically throughout the part. So that's okay if you cover up one area completely. So I'm going to continue this all the way around, come back, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now that we've got our rust on from Vallejo and it's dried, and you can see how it's starting to rust up in areas in through here. It's starting to look like it's starting to rust. Well, we're going to enhance that a little bit more by putting on a light rust wash. Not heavy, but just around the areas here, just to bring out some more of that rust, but of a different kind of a color. And this is a wash, and you want to be careful with it because you don't want to completely cover it, again, we still want some of that cable to show through. So I'm only going over it in certain areas, just kind of sporadically around. Okay, and I'm going to continue on with this. We'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, now I'm going to apply some black panel liner to bring out the twists and folds of the rope. And I'm not using the brush that comes with the panel liner because I'm kind of like sort of just very lightly brushing it on with very little of the panel liner on the brush. And the reason why I do a lot of dry brushing on this is because this is such a small part that I think that dry brushing is a better way to go to achieve the results that I'm looking for anyway. So let me go ahead and get this on. We'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, next we're going to work on the shovel. And the first thing I'm going to do is paint the handle in desert yellow. And I'm going to try to paint it to where the paint is going to sort of dry, get a little tacky. That's going to create or simulate natural wood grain as the paint kind of clumps up a little bit. Just going to go over this little by little till I see some natural wood grain kind of show through or appear as I'm doing the painting. So I'm just going to go back and forth on this. And I'll do that, continue that off camera, and we'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, while off camera, I also added some NATO black here to the shovel area, and then I used the base color of the tank here, which I'm not going to pronounce the color. I will put it on screen though, and over here as well, which is the hardware, the clamp, or that's holding it down onto the tank. So next, I'm going to take a little bit of black panel liner and put it onto the handle, which should create some shadowing and bring out some of that wood effect that I was trying to create with the paint. Just a little bit up here, trying to hold on to this. The camera's in my way, so this is going to be a little bit difficult. There, and right about in through here. And now I'm going to add a little bit of brown panel liner for the wood grain. Now the camera may not be able to pick this up, but the wood grain is showing through. So right in through here where I put the black panel liner and then I put the brown on top of it, create a little bit of a shadow and wear effect. I'm going to put a little bit more black panel liner there in the center and up near the top where you're grabbing the shovel and using it. So it'll show a little bit of wear. Right there, right in here. Now I'm going to try to see if I can't kind of blend that in a little bit. And then taking my paintbrush and just working it into the paint a little bit, making it more of a weird look. Hopefully this is showing up on camera. Zoom in a little bit more, and you can see that there's a little bit of a weird look up here where you're grabbing it and using it, and right down in this area as well. Over in here, I'm going to add a little bit of silvering. I'm going to take a little bit of steel powder and go over the shovel area with it. And next, I'm going to take a little bit of rust wash and apply that up onto the metal parts of the shovel that hold it in place on the tank. Also kind of dirties it up a little bit. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of brown panel liner and put it on the bolts that are securing the shovel down and make those pop a little bit like that. I'm going to take a clean brush and work that in a little. Just removing what I don't want. And it looks kind of dark, I know, on camera, but it's not that dark in person. Still too dark. Take a Q-tip, kind of rub it around to take up as much of that excess as you don't want. Okay, so that's our shovel, ready to go on the tank. Okay, the last three parts that I'm going to be putting onto the tank, or the last three tools I'm going to be putting on the tank, is this one here, and this one's referenced as D23. I have no idea what it is, but obviously it's a metal tool. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint that in gunmetal. Maybe somebody knows what this is and can let me know in the comment section below whether or not I identified it correctly and if I'm painting it the right color or not. Then we have our hatchet, which I'm going to do the same way as we did the shovel. And then we also have a cutting tool, probably something to cut wire, bob wire, or the like. And I'm going to also paint that the same way as I did the hatchet and the shovel. So let me get these painted and we'll put them on the tank. Okay, the tank's done. It's weathered up, it's painted, and it came out really, really good. Even though I think that the camouflage on the side armor didn't come out as well as I had hoped, I think the overall image of the tank came out really, really well. I'm really pleased at the end result and how this actually turned out. I had a lot of fun building it. I think that anyone who is from a beginner all the way up would enjoy and have fun building this tank without any problems whatsoever. As I noted in the build video, I think the manual could be larger. That would make the images more clear and easier to understand how they're supposed to be assembled and how they're supposed to go onto the tank. But other than that, I think everything came out just fine. I do question why we assemble parts when you're never ever going to see them. The gun, that's a really great example. There's a lot of details that are underneath that turret that you're never ever going to see. There's also details underneath the hatch that you're never ever going to see. So I kind of question on those types of instructions. But other than that, this was a really, really fun build. Okay, I'm going to give you a 360 view of the tank as it goes around the turntable. So you can see all the detail parts that are on the tank. And I also will do some close-up photos of it as well so you can get a closer look at it. Again, I think that the instructions could be a little bit more clear. But in terms of painting and weathering, everything came out just great. And as I said, I'll take some photos as well so you can see the entire tank and the details of the tools. Now I do have some build tips I would like to also go over. When you're going to be putting on your tools, make sure that you have your turret removed from the secondary hull or the top of the hull. That'll allow you to have easier access to get these tools in. And then the other advice I have is over here on step 11. You're going to be assembling or putting under the tank these S pieces right here. You've got a crowbar and you have this piece right here, which I will get to in just a moment. And then in step number 12, there's also a box that you need to put over these S pieces. My advice is to first put in the crowbar and then put in these S pieces and then put in the box. And the reason why I say that is because if you zero in, the crowbar is attached here or anchored here and it's anchored here. But you'll also notice that there is a lug that comes up that sandwiches the crowbar between the lug and eventually the box that's going to go over on top of these S pieces. My advice is to get this crowbar in first before you install these S pieces and that box. If you don't, and this is the last piece that you're going to put in, the crowbar, you're going to have a hard time getting that crowbar to go in. It's a very tight fit between the crowbar and the edge of the box. Now this piece right here, this is a tool of some sort. I have no idea what it is, but I put this on at the same time I was doing the tools, and there is no reason to do that. You can actually go ahead and install at the same time that you're doing all the other pieces in this step. So what I did was as though I installed it at the same time I was doing the tools, and I didn't need to. This is the piece that we're referring to. I'm going to zoom back out. That's this piece right here. And what I ended up doing was just painting it and weathering it to match the tank. And it would have matched a lot better, I think, if this piece was on the tank originally as I was doing the painting and the weathering. It did come out pretty good. I have no real complaints about it, but there's really no reason not to have this on the tank as you're doing the assembly. Talking about that crowbar, here is the crowbar that we're talking about, and you'll notice right here, that's that little protrusion, that little plastic protrusion right here. And that is between the box and the crowbar. And getting that piece, the crowbar, to wedge in right here was extremely difficult. It's a very, very tight fit. And as you're doing it, you have a risk of breaking that crowbar. So again, my advice is to put the box on and the S pieces on after you have already installed your crowbar. The other piece of advice I would have for you too is on making sure that this support bar that you put on way earlier in the assembly stage is pointed more to this end over here. You'll notice that there is a protrusion on this piece. There's a protrusion right here that raises up and hits this support bar. And if this support bar is not centered properly, it's going to not allow this piece to go into the hole that you have already pre-drilled. Put this piece in as a dry fit, and that will allow you to properly align this piece in. Otherwise, if this is not in correctly, as I said, this piece is not going to go in correct. The last thing that you should put on the tank is the antenna. Do this last. This is a very fragile piece, and it can break very easily. So put your turret on the tank first, then put this piece on, because even when you're trying to position the turret onto the top of the hull, you have a tendency to knock this, and as you're doing so, you could break it. Okay, well that's it. I'm going to put some detailed photos up so you can get a closer look at the tank. But other than that, I really do hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. It does help the channel quite a bit. And if you haven't already subscribed, please remember to subscribe. Subscribing does also help the channel a lot, and it also notifies you with new videos that have been posted. Other than that, have a great day. Always have fun in your garage or your workshop or wherever it is that you build your models. Until the next time, we'll see you later. Take care.